LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logrhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Waterfall Security Solutions, the market leader in unidirectional gateway technology. Their industrial cybersecurity technology protects critical infrastructures and control systems from remote online cyber attacks. It's installed around the world, including nuclear plants in the US and electric grids. Their unidirectional security gateway creates an impassable physical barrier preventing communications from flowing into the industrial control network, enabling safe and secure IT and OT integration, remote monitoring, and cloud services. Visit go.waterfallsecurity.com/enterprise security. The first 100 listeners who register will receive a free copy of SCADA Security, What's Broken and How to Fix It, written by Waterfall's VP of Industrial Security, Andrew Ginter. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, securing code and connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/ESW.
Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. I'm, of course, here with John Strand and our guest host for stories this week. Sticking around, Mr. Zane Lackey from Signal Sciences is here. We're going to kick it off by talking about the distributed ledger algorithm. John, you're going to tell us all about it, apparently, in the 3 minutes you had before the show to skim this article.
All right. So I read this a number of times. And what this particular article in Mr. Mark Anderson is, or Mance Harmon, is kind of missing is a lot of people, whenever they look at computer security, they tend to look at computer security as a series of problems that can be solved with algorithms. Bruce Schneier is one of the people that talked about it a lot. He used to say that almost all the issues in computer security could be solved with crypto. And now that he's a little bit older and he's a little bit wiser, he's kind of come around and he said, you never attack crypto directly, you attack the implementation thereof. And all of these systems seem like they're absolutely wonderful security systems, but it's always the implementation of these systems that get you into trouble. So the problem, I don't want to say I have a problem with this article. It's an interesting concept and talking about distributed ledger algorithms, especially whenever you're starting to host data in multiple different locations. And it's going to become more and more important whenever we start looking at distributed algorithms like FAST and a number of other algorithms that are being developed by Google and Netflix, where you can have your content distributed across multiple different endpoints, and you can use multiple streaming in parallel to multiple endpoints to basically make sure that you have resiliency and speed in your data. And that's great, and that's awesome, and that's wonderful. But then when you start reading articles like this, you start getting into problems where he breaks down and he says, this particular approach, distributed ledger technology, appropriately applied, and that's a big if, practically eliminates entire categories of attacks. And he says it completely eliminates the category of attack of changing history, or denial of service, or influencing transaction order. And yeah, that may be, the math associated with it may be solid, but that little thing that he put in like parentheses saying appropriately applied is the biggest single problem with this, is almost everything seems to be incredibly solid until it actually gets implemented technologically, and that's where you can start attacking it. And so it's an interesting article, but it's more academic than anything else.
Are they applying this to identity management, given that it's coming from Ping Identity Management?
It has to, because whenever you're starting to deal with systems that are clustered all over the world, that concept of identity needs to be federated across every single one of those endpoints. And that's probably why it's on the Ping blog.
Interesting. Let's see. What else are we talking about? Next generation antivirus, John. Go! So we got John's team at Black Hills InfoSec, just for those that don't know, they do a lot of research on bypassing AV, largely just as a product of environment. You're on a penetration test, you have to bypass antivirus. And we did a webcast on that, and there are technical segments that are running on Paul Security Weekly to show you how that's done in a lot of different scenarios. And so when we see articles about antivirus, John, I just kind of snicker a little.
I think that you're setting me up. up. You have three articles in a row, almost in a row, that are like clearly put here to bait me, like catnip for a cat. So if we're looking at this one, Invincia, they basically say Invincia is the industry's #1 performing next generation antivirus. And as soon as I read this, I looked at it, I'm like, who? And I feel like the guy on Guardians of the Galaxy. So we don't really see Invincia very often at all, or if they're there, they weren't really a factor at all. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is a lot of these vendors are trying to push forward the silver bullet analogy, right? And Invincia's press statement is like that. It basically says flagship product that stops unknown malware, ransomware, and fileless attacks before they can impact. It's a load of crap, folks. And we got into a little bit of a Twitter war this week after we did the webcast. We had one gentleman who is a security researcher at ESET basically called me out. And he said, in one of your slides and on your blog, it said that you were using VirusTotal, and VirusTotal is crap. It completely disproves everything that you did. And we were like, well, if you would have gone to the webcast, you would have saw that we actually ran it on real systems and we bypassed it as well. And he's like, oh, so now you're telling me your blog is just there to try to convince people to go see your webcast. I'm like, well, if you don't want to go to the webcast, we have a Dropbox with the individual slides and videos for each of the individual AVs that we bypassed. And he goes, well, you didn't bypass ESET and Kaspersky, so therefore it's irrelevant. We have some blogs coming out where we are going to be bypassing Nod and Kaspersky. But it's interesting to me how the AV community constantly gets whipped up into this crazed kind of delusional space that they are the silver bullet. They don't try to sell themselves as what they are as part of the overall security architecture, not an end-all be-all of computer security. So it's funny because everybody, and you told me to calm down about this, with the industry's #1 performing next-generation antivirus, anybody can make that claim, right? And it's just really hard because we dig through this crap all the time whenever we have reports and we're talking to CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, CFOs, and they read press releases like this. And it's very hard for them to try to get that reconciled with what they see in a penetration test. And they say, well, this vendor was supposed to be best of breed. We were running McAfee, and they were looked at by NGSS Labs, and they said that they were #1, and you blew through it.
Yeah, NSS Labs.
Yeah, NSS Labs. So where's the reality? And I think that marketing hype being put as news becomes very difficult for people to cut through. And if it's hard for me to cut through, it's very, very difficult for the individual security teams to cut through the noise of the marketing hype of these products.
Now, Zane, you must see this in your industry as well. Customers must come to you and say, well, I don't want to do, and they don't say it like this, but like, I don't want to do any of the hard stuff with web application security. Like, I just want your tool and I want to drop it in and I want to say it's secure, right? And that's a similar thing to antivirus, right?
Yeah, I think John said it exactly how I've always said it in the past, right? Which is, you think about different security technologies as a piece of your overall security strategy. If you find yourself, if anyone's in the position where, you're believing the marketing that one particular vendor is going to drop in and solve all of your security problems magically, like there's probably some challenges headed your way. But I really think that, especially for plenty of CISOs that have been around the block plenty of times, right? We've all been so jaded by vendor promises and everything like that you really tend to think about, okay, how do I put vendors in place as a piece of my overall strategy? And they can have real value in that scenario. It's the not going for the strategy of, well, I bought one thing, so all of my problems are solved, right? I really don't think that's ever going to be the case, even for incredibly effective and incredibly great vendor technologies.
I agree. So this next story, it comes from Risk Vision, and I get confused with all the companies with Risk in the title. There was Risk IO, but now they're Kenna, and then there's Risk Sense is another one, and it sounds like Risk Vision is similar to a lot of these companies that like to apply services that build on other information you're collecting in your environment, such as vulnerability scanning. When I was at Tenable, I looked at a lot of these vendors to see what it was that we're doing that was really interesting to me, and I'm puzzled by their kind of tagline of threat is the new risk, because to me those are two totally different things, and one doesn't become the other, in my opinion.
This is a company that so fundamentally gets this wrong is a company that I would just run from. And this isn't even like marketing hype. Like somebody actually approved this and they're going forward with it. So
now my other board, John, is potential sponsors for the show, and I got my black marker on. I'm just crossing them off.
Risk Vision is one of them. I doubt very strongly they'll exist in 18 months, but that's just me. But if we're looking at it, let's talk about what threat is and what risk is. These actual words have actual meanings. So usually whenever you're looking at risk, at its core definition, it has to have a vulnerability and a threat where they intersect. So if you're looking at a Venn diagram, it's two circles. And anywhere a threat and a vulnerability can actually interact with each other is where you actually define risk. Now, you can actually further elaborate on the definition of risk and put in cause of impact, likelihood of impact, and things like that. But at its core, sufficient definition of risk has to have a vulnerability and it has to have a threat. And to basically say that threat is the new risk is taking a component that defines the thing and then calling it that thing. A threat is a threat and a risk is a risk. And not understanding those things. So it's just a base misunderstanding of terms that we use. Like all of us hate the CISSP. We can't stand it, but all of us get it. And what it does do is it gives us a common framework, definitions, and terms. And that means it has a tremendous amount of value. And this is basically turning that completely around. Not even around, it's trying to redefine it unnecessarily for the purposes of marketing propaganda. And that is extremely dangerous, and it shows that they fundamentally do not understand what risk is.
Now, they are addressing a challenge that many of us have, and that is when you discover vulnerabilities in your network, or when you discover threats, right, you have to assign risk to them, to use the correct terminology. And a lot of what's missing from tools and somewhat the processes that are in place today is they're not taking into account actually some of the things they mentioned in this press release, right? The operational things that you're doing, compliance things that you're doing, the analytics that you're doing to collect and understand maybe where your data lies, right? And I'm sure, Zane, you deal with this as well. As your product can identify vulnerabilities, you inevitably get the question, well, how do I rank that vulnerability? How do I prioritize from there? And that's where companies like Risk Vision are trying to play and prey on that problem and solve that problem. I'm curious how you answer that question, Zane, for your customers, because I know you get it, is that, they say, I found this stuff, like, how do I prioritize fixing it?
Yeah, I think it's part of the overall shift in our defensive strategy, which is that what are your attackers, whether they're real or simulated, what are they actually discovering, right? I think this is this big shift to visibility, whether that's your production web applications, whether that's your production infrastructure, whether that's your endpoints, but getting visibility into what are people actually targeting, right? Because I think that we've all done this as defenders, where we've taken a bug and we brought it back to a ops engineer or a developer or something like that, and we said, hey, this is really important. And we've all gotten the response before. I'm flashing back to my pen testing days. It's like, yeah, but you're experts. You're paid to find this. Nobody else would find that. And I think it's a fundamentally different conversation when you can bring real visibility to the rest of the organization. Say, hey, this is where people are attacking you right now, and this is them discovering a real issue right now. It alters the course of that conversation. And so I think that especially from the Penta side, and John and Paul from that side, that bringing pen test results and everything and saying, hey, this is how this aligns with a real threat, because this is how a real threat actor operates and would discover this and everything like that. The more you can actually tie it to real scenarios, the more effective it actually is in communicating.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Kind of along those lines, in data gravity, I don't know if Zane or John, you're familiar with data gravity. I'm a little bit familiar only because Andrew Hay works there, and I like Andrew. So it automatically gives this more weight. And essentially what it sounds like they're doing is, in a virtualization environment, they're able to track the data no matter where virtually it's living or what virtual environment that it's living in. And that's somewhat speaking to what we're talking about, is identifying risk. One of the things that we didn't really highlight was not only knowing what an attacker might do, but also knowing like where your data is and how sensitive it is and where it's traversing. And I believe that's the problem that data gravity looks like from this press release that they're trying to solve, which I think is pretty good.
I think it's actually a really cool idea, especially whenever you're talking about VM motion, virtualized environments, and things getting shifted all over the place. I think it's cool. And the other thing, I'm not sure if they actually have this, but it used to look like the way it hooks is it's not in the operating system itself, but it's actually in the hypervisor and watching it. So that's cool, because if you have a rootkit or something on the operating system, it will not see that it's actually being hooked and monitored from the virtual machine environment. And that's awesome. So I think that there's some really, really cool things that can be done with virtualization as far as security appliances, and this is just one of them. And this makes sense to me. Whenever you talk about virtualization exploding, you talk about data moving around and being able to protect that data in such a way that me as an attacker, I won't see those protections in place, is just really, really cool. And, once again, Andrew works there. We know Andrew. We love Andrew. Andrew's never, ever, ever worked at a company that was a turd. And that just speaks volumes for the fact that he works there and kind of brings this product along.
Yeah, and I think we're speaking what Zane was talking about earlier. Is someone there that has been in the trenches is certainly, it makes it carry weight when you're talking to a vendor. So I think that's important.
Absolutely.
There's a couple of IoT stories in here. Now, Ixia and K2 have teamed up. And, of course, now the article isn't pulling up, I think because I have an ad blocker. So we may have to. I got it
right here.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
What is the gist of this one, John?
It just looks to me, well, I can't see the whole thing. It actually fades and it makes me want to try to log in.
Yes.
But it looks to me like Ixia does really cool stuff. K2 does some really cool stuff as well.
What did I say? I always say Zixia when I see that for some reason. It's
I've always heard it referred to as Ixia.
It is Ixia. You are correct. I am wrong in my pronunciation, as usual.
And this is one of those companies that's been around for a long time and has done real dark wizard cool things with network traffic generation and things like that. And it honestly just looks to me like they're just notifying the rest of the world, hey, our product can actually do IoT stuff. And it looks like it's marketing hype. They're cool companies, but they are absolutely doing some marketing to try to capitalize in on some buzzwords of the day.
And speaking of which, Beyond Trust has done the same thing by offering a free cloud-based enterprise IoT vulnerability scanner.
Yeah, and is Yaffe still at Beyond Trust?
Yaffe is still there. Yep. And granted, John and I are friends with the VP of Marketing for Beyond Trust, Mike Yaffe. And those who've watched, Paul's Security Weekly over the past 11 years have probably seen Mike or heard Mike referenced on that show as well. But I think this is a good thing, and I actually have an entire model built around our podcast that if you're a vendor and you're giving something away, and sure, you want people to buy your product. I get it. You're a business. That's totally fine. I'm all for capitalism, right? But if you're taking portions of your product or special projects and you're making those freely available to the community and it's helping the community, that's cool. Like, come on the show and talk about it. And I think this is, they're obviously preying on a buzzword, but if this can help people better understand the risk involved in IoT in their environments, I think it's a cool thing.
Yep. And if we're looking at like these particular things, people are probably like, well, they only get mad at marketing people that aren't their friends. That's somewhat not true, because honestly, if Yaffe put out something that was complete crap,
we totally call him out on it.
We would call him on it. In fact, we would call him directly.
Yes.
And we would rip on him on the show live, and he knows that. But it's probably the same with Andrew too.
Yes.
But one of the fundamental differences, there's basic marketing ambulance chasing, which is something that you expect, because if you're not doing it, all of your competitors are doing it. You have to do that at some level. But if it looks like you took buzzwords, you threw them into a blender and you spun them all around and you kicked out a crappy thing, we're going to call you on it. And basically these people are just basically standing up and saying, hey, we have something that can help with this IoT security issue. A lot of it's not new per se. A lot of times it's repackaging existing plugins and existing offerings, so it actually shows up on a dashboard, kind of like Kodi. You remember Kodi at Tenable?
Oh, I thought you meant Kodi, like the application that.
No. Like the Kodi.
The Kodi. Yes.
The guy who told me, Ron at his house, told me that Kodi was worth more to Tenable than you while we were drinking and smoking cigars.
I mean, he's absolutely right.
But Kodi had this ability to take Security Center, and if somebody said, hey, we need a dashboard for IoT, and he could do that. Yeah. And he could make that happen. And that's cool. And that shows versatility in the product line that can actually react and create these different things for these different like buzzwords and ambulance chasing things that show up.
And I'm also very concerned, IoT being very near and dear to my heart, in that enterprises, it's going to bite them, right? And one of the things that kind of pointed me to some of these IoT stories is, John or Zane, I don't know if you ever come across IPMI, Intelligent Platform Management Interface, right? These are the little embedded computers that sit inside of really big computers to let you manage the really big computers, right? And if you read the recent Krebs article where he basically outs the person behind the Mirai botnet, which we'll be covering later on Paul Security Weekly, they reference an attack, a DDoS attack that was built using IPMI compromised systems. And largely, I think those are built still today. And this was back in 2015, right, when they built the IPMI bot. And a lot of that research was coming out around then as well. And I think that the vulnerability that they're preying upon is default passwords or easily guessable passwords, mostly default passwords. And John and I were talking earlier, like the ability for organizations to very accurately and most importantly, efficiently detect when a default password's in use in their organizations, I think is still somewhat limited, in my opinion. I think vulnerability scanners do a nice job, but as John said, well, a lot of people just turn that off because they don't want to either crash a device or trigger an account lockout. So I still think we're in a kind of bad shape there.
Yep, and that's one of the things we were talking about in the pre-show banner with our webcast a couple of hours ago, is there's tons of things that are not being tested, and that in and of itself should be a webcast. Like, I'm usually not allowed to attack your users at home. I'm not allowed to attack their phones because those are their personal phones. I'm not allowed to do password spraying.
And IPMI is out of the question because you could accidentally turn off all their servers, which would be really bad.
We have had situations during our pen test just by doing a simple port scan where we have shut off lights for an entire building.
Yeah.
We have had a pen test where we were doing a UDP port scan, and we hit a port, and just by sending an empty UDP packet, forced this cash register line to violently eject the cash drawer from all of their stores. So these are some of my favorite things in pen testing, but it's also one of those things that we're always terrified about, that we're going to trigger and we're going to have massive damage to an organization. So we tend to basically tread very lightly.
Definitely. No, I think those are all real issues, but simultaneously, there is nothing more hilarious to your attackers than the concept of out of scope, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know, right? I like it when we do something like that and we go to the customer and they're like, we just ejected all the cash registers for thousands of stores. Sorry. And you call your point of contact and they're like, that was awesome. That was the coolest thing ever. You can do that. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. That kind of thing can happen.
We only took out a couple of dozen cashiers that just happened to be like, bent over, getting something underneath the counter, and the drawer just cracked them in the head. I shouldn't even be laughing at that, but for some reason that's funny. It's like a fail video. It's a fail video ready to happen. Yes. In any case, I'm still very concerned about default passwords because I know everyone that does penetration testing is like, yep, I've used default passwords how many times on a test? On most of them?
Yeah.
The majority of them? Yeah.
Well, quite a few, yeah.
Okay. Any other stories that looked interesting to you, John?
No, I mean, we had so many this week. Fortinet, talking about different devices. What was it? You had one in here about Logarithm.
Logarithm and Palo Alto. Yeah, that's the one I wanted
interesting.
This was from last week, and I don't remember. It's a unified tool to reduce time to detect and respond to cyber threats.
And you almost have to wonder if this isn't a trial balloon to see if a merger between these two companies or one buying the other one out is what's on the table. I always find it interesting because Logarithm does network forensics, and that's kind of Palo Alto's place. And I don't know, it's just going to be interesting. It's kind of see them dance around each other for a little while and see when one buys the other.
Yeah, I mean, and they're both pretty awesome vendors too in their own right. So.
Yep. But a lot of the other stories, I think, are just kind of, not as interesting.
I agree.
All right.
Awesome. Well, Zane, thank you very much for coming on
Thanks
Enterprise
so much for having me on, you guys.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. Thanks again. I really had a great time.
John, thank you as always, and we'll see everyone on the next episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.